Cool. So we'll start. This is weird. This is my first time ever doing this. Obviously, you know me, but I want to show this to the world. But my name's Diego, and you are
Randy
Bertok, Mr. Bertok,
Mr.
commonly
Bertok,
known,
yep.
right? So the reason I wanted to do this is I think not a lot of people get to show ordinary people and get to interview them and ask them questions about things. And I think it's important we do that, which is why I'm doing this. So this is called The Ordinary Podcast, in which I just ask you questions that I think are interesting, and we can have a talk. If you ever want to ask me something, ask me it. It's a conversation, and I'm not trying to control it, but just guide it.
Cool? Sounds good.
Cool. So I hope not to take more than 30 minutes, but whatever. Okay, cool. I just want to open up real broad. What are your thoughts on education? Just, broad, but if you were to say education is this or it means that, what would it be?
Wow, so many directions to go with that. So being an educator, I think for 17 years, you see a lot. Commonly in our profession, we talk about what's referred to as the pendulum. The pendulum swings one way, and so it might be testing. Testing becomes our priority, and then the pendulum swings back this way. And now this other thing is a priority, and then it swings back to testing. And unfortunately, there's a lot of peaks and valleys. In the profession, I think that there's a lot of people that come in and and they have the right ideas and they want to try new things. But one of the things that we found is that it doesn't really seem like anything. Like we lack, I think, as a profession of educators, stick with itness. We want to implement something, and if we don't have immediate results, we're going to trash can it and then on to the next thing and on to the next thing. And so I think, for lack of a better term, it causes a considerable degree of burnout because we've got professional ADD. We're being told, here, this is the next greatest thing. And now, oh, no, now it's this thing. And so our attention's being pulled in so many different directions that unfortunately what ends up happening is that teachers just end up relying on, the antiquated teaching strategies that they learned decades ago in their credentialing courses. So that's kind of, my opinion about the state of things. We've got the right idea. We've got the funds to do it. We've got the resources to do it. It's just really, really hard getting so many different moving pieces all headed in the same direction. One thing I think sorely that the profession as a whole lacks is collaboration. We just don't have it in our, it's not in our contract. We don't have, scheduled time in which we can regularly meet with the people in our subject area, our grade level, as a school site, as departments, with colleagues from other sites in the district. And I think that if we talked more and understood more about what everybody's trying to get accomplished and things, we'd probably make much more significant progress. So those are kind of my thoughts on education right now. I love it, honestly. Best job in the world. Best for me, definitely best career path in the world. Fulfilling, rewarding, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Now, you say that you have the resources, and I noticed that at our school, we've just received laptops, which is, a great thing. Not many kids have that, but do you also feel that teachers are sort of undermined and sort of underappreciated in the grand scheme of things? Because teachers aren't necessarily paid the same amount as people with doctorates or they're doctors, people in the sciences, the STEM fields right now. But it seems to me that teaching has as much of an impact, if not more, on those fields, but they don't receive as much.
Yeah, it's interesting. Interesting that you say that. I think that that's a problem that is pretty unique to our country, because if you look at the way teachers are regarded in parts of Europe and things like that, teachers are actually held in really high regard and high esteem. I don't know necessarily that I don't know necessarily that pay is the answer. You know, I guess if I were to run the world, would teachers get a pay increase? They would. However, you know, it wouldn't just be a carte blanche pay increase. It would be, you know, hey, you know, you went to school and you got your teaching credential, and that's great. But when you renew your teaching credential, you know, you have to, you know, go through some sort of competency exams or something like that that warrant you still getting the paycheck that you get. You know, we know, like lawyers, for example, you know, when a lawyer is, you know, in their prime, right, they're making money hand over fist with clients left and right. But, you know, sometimes just the profession itself will age people out. We see it all the time in the teaching profession, and yet, you know, and I don't know, it sounds horrible to me, but, you know, sometimes teachers, I mean, we get burnt out. So to automatically increase salary, is that the answer? No. To, you know, increase salary, but put the caveat on there that, you know, you've got to pass competency exams and things like that, you know, to you know, stay relevant really and stay current on coursework and, you know, latest strategies, all that other kind of stuff. You know, I'd like to see some sort of, you know, something like that. Because the system as it works right now, if I came to my classroom and I sat at my desk every single day and did nothing except put an assignment on the board, have the students turn it in at the end of the period, I would get paid the exact same amount as a teacher who came to school every day and, you know, put together these amazing interactive lessons, you know, utilized technology, you know, and really did everything humanly possible to make the curriculum relevant. So how is it that you can have two professionals, right, in the same line of work and such drastically different effort levels and the pay is still the same? It doesn't make any sense. So I think if teachers are going to get paid more, then I think the public has every right to expect more.
Right. And I agree with that because, you know, it seems to me that a lot of kids, the reason they hate school is not necessarily that they're learning, because you hardly hear kids complaining about, like, I don't like this subject. It's more or less, I don't like the homework, the work, whatever comes with it. And I wonder if we had teachers that perhaps, you know, were more focused on what they were doing and didn't necessarily, because I understand homework, whatnot, is an important part of it, and maybe you can give me your perspective on this, but I think if a teacher really spent the time in the classroom, you know, like breaking things down and then adding the homework as a sort of like insurance as to learning that, because it seems to me that homework's become more of, instead of insurance as to learning, it's become a second way of learning that a lot of teachers rely on because, you know, it's in the curriculum, and if the curriculum can teach you it, then I don't really have to, because I'll just spend my class time elaborating on it, but the curriculum will actually teach you. And I find that strange, and a lot of kids grow to hate that, and because of that, they grow to hate school. But if things were different, then perhaps, you know, kids would become more interested in the school system. Or at least, what do you think? You know,
it's really interesting. You make a lot of really good points. You know, with homework, you're right. I think you know, and I think that's one of the problems that we need to, you know, I think that as educators, we really have to evaluate our approach to homework, reevaluate our approach to homework, because, you know, we give homework because that's what teachers are supposed to do, right? You know, lawyers are supposed to try cases, doctors are supposed to you know, save patients, and teachers are supposed to give homework. Giving homework, though, it makes a lot of assumptions, I think. And you know what's really interesting is that homework, you know, in the early 20th century, so early 1900s, you know, homework was actually reintroduced to the American school system, and it was given out as a form of punishment. I would venture to say that attitude is probably consistent with, you know, youth today, that homework is looked at as punishment. But the thing is that so one of the assumptions I think that giving just homework carte blanche makes is that students are capable of doing it. You know, that's incredibly foolish, perhaps, on our part, you know, because what we're doing is we're saying, here, I'm going to assign you homework. You're going to learn what you are supposed to learn from the homework, and I'm just going to review and reinforce. Okay, but we know that all students learn differently, learn at different levels, different speeds, have different capacities for learning. And so saying that this one homework assignment is going to do this one fantastic thing for all students, that's really naive of us. You know, we know better than that. Homework needs to be specific, it needs to be targeted, and it needs to be something that the students are capable of accomplishing independently, which means that there's a lot of front loading, I think, that needs to happen. Quality first instruction needs to happen. Students need to be comfortable with the process of whatever it is that they're working on, and once that happens, then homework can be assigned to then reinforce. Or if there's a particular skill set that a student is lacking and they just need more practice. Repetition, we know sometimes repetition is, I mean, that's the best form of practice. There's a reason NBA players, you know, shoot 1,000 free throws a day. It's because repetition, repetition, repetition. It's the same thing with homework. You know, there are certain skills that we can bring students up to grade level through repetition. You know, that's just a fact, but assigning homework for the sake of assigning homework, you know, especially, and I'm probably making presumptions here, but I think today is, you know, schools are in competition. We're in competition with the digital world. Because once upon a time, teachers were looked at as this almost infinite source of knowledge. Now, why do I need to ask my teacher? I can just go to Google. I can look it up for myself, provided, of course, you have the appropriate research skills and things like that. You know, but so it really kind of forces us to ask, you know, what is the role of the teacher in the classroom? You know, we're no longer disseminators of knowledge. What we are, though, is, you know, we help establish processes, and we identify, you know, weakened areas in those processes, and we apply and we assign prescriptive homework to address those weaknesses. So I think, you know, we have a lot of reinventing to do in order to make what we do in the classroom relevant. Just today, you know, my freshman class, for the first time, they got all their laptops and they're all logged on, and I have my assignment up on the board and everything that they're supposed to do, and they were quiet and they were on task and they were doing the work and they were interacting with their computer and not with each other and not with me. And I had to stop for a minute, and I was like, wow, is this what the 21st century classroom looks like? You know, is this how it's going to be? Where's the human component? Where's the human element, the human interaction? So, as with homework, I think, you know, in us reevaluating that, there's other parts like, you know, curriculum and relevance, and, you know, even teacher relevance, I think that we have to figure out. And I know that was a really long answer to a kind of short question, but yeah, homework isn't the only thing that we need to reevaluate. There's a whole bunch of other steps in that process that we've got to take a good hard look at. You know, even putting education in a context so that you know, modern teenagers can understand it. You know, reading a novel from 50 years ago, it's great, and you know, yeah, there's thematic elements and stuff that we can certainly learn from, but you know, look at the breadth of experience and what kids then were exposed to versus now. I think kids today see a lot more, know a lot more. The world is a much smaller place, and so some of those things that were a really big deal, like, you know, Tom Sawyer sailing down a river on a raft, which was a huge deal, you know, in the context of that novel. Today it's like, and, you know, our students have been exposed to things that are, you know, experiences that are much more dynamic and much more exhilarating and, you know, sometimes experiences that are much more terrible. So how do we compete for the modern students' attention?
And you know, I like to add on to that. In a sense, I have another question, and this will be from the student side of things. Because, you know, I'll kind of get personal with this one, but is high school really necessary? And I prompt this because, you know, like you said, there's a new age of technology, and now, whereas before you had to find your research for things, now a simple Google button can help you with this. And in the wrong hands, that technology can be devastating. But considering that most kids are getting it for education purposes, is the curriculum of high school even necessary? And it's not that one thing relates to the other. It's more or less that I personally find myself feeling that school is dull or just pointless, because I am going to spend an hour almost in every class, but I will never go into the physics profession. I'll never go into a profession with English in it, never go into a profession with math in it. And although they're key concepts, until when is a key concept, you know, essential? Because I'm not going to be using, you know, quadratic formula in my everyday life, and it's an argument a lot of people you say, but most are like, no, you know, just learn it, and it's ignored. But the same applies to a lot of subjects. English, to a certain extent, you know, this might be different for both of us, but I feel like English, after a while, it becomes teaching you the basics to teaching you to read certain things and understand why they use the things that they do, instead of just teaching you what you need to know. And most kids, either way, with their English classes, only know the basics. And, you know, it's kind of weird that we separate the ones who know the most and the ones that don't, when in reality, you know, why should the ones that don't be put to suffer through the things, you know, that they don't want to know, when the kids that do want to know want more about it, and we can focus on them, and the kids that don't can focus on their own paths? Because I feel like a lot of times kids are put into classes or situations they don't want to learn, and then we're just forcing them. And it's like Einstein said, you know, if you make like a fish try and climb a tree, it's not, you know, it's going to think it's stupid. So, you know, I might have misquoted it, but, you know, the same principle applies. These kids are going to think they're less than ordinary because you have this, you know, superior, what seems to be like a hierarchy of kids who are intelligent, and this causes confusion in a lot of kids, when in reality maybe they're just not meant for it. And if we got rid of, you know, this idea that you had to go through these 4 years of unnecessary knowledge, because why is it that college only comes after, when I've already spent maybe 2 years not focusing on my career, when I could already be out in college focusing on my field, what I want to do? And a lot of kids, you know, I have the blessing of, if I want to pursue film, I can go outside and record anything. But it's not like a kid can go and say, I'm going to practice law today. And we're not giving them these opportunities they need. So, you know, I asked to you, even though it was a really long answer for a short question, is high school really then necessary? And what are, you know, if we do keep it, what are the things we need to change so that these kids don't go out into the world thinking they're stupid and continue to, you know, get a 9 to 5 at some, you know, low paying job, and, you know, continue to live a less than, you know, a low class, you know, family, raise one, and then bring them up in the same education. And it's almost a cycle. What can we do to stop that?
Yeah, so there are a lot of parts to that question. The first question is high school, is it even relevant? You know, and I know this is going to sound like a biased answer coming from an educator, but stepping out of my role as an educator and just looking at what is the function of education. Education, do we need education? Yes. Because to say no, I think makes a lot of assumptions. And one of the assumptions that I think it makes is that everybody has access to the same opportunities. No matter where you come from, what neighborhood you live in, what city you live in, what your ethnic background is, all that, can we in good conscience say that every kid in America has access to the same opportunities? We can't. Okay. One of the ways that we can fix that, or one of the ways that we can't fix it, one of the ways in which we can try to lessen the opportunity gap is through public education. Now, even with that, there are still a ton of flaws, and you pointed them out. We have federal mandates as to what we need to teach. We have state mandates of what has to get taught. We have county mandates of what has to get taught. We have district mandates of what has to get taught. And what we're doing is we're trying to say, we're trying to create one Band-Aid that treats all wounds. That is nearly impossible, so much so that we are destined to fail before we even get started. There is no, magic pill that is going to, meet the needs of every single kid. There isn't, or meet the interests of every single kid. I think one of the solutions is probably, schools need to diversify. We need to offer more. When you look at the course catalog of a junior college or a university, so some of them are almost as thick as an entire book, right? Obviously, given the number of public schools, high schools, elementary schools, middle schools that exist in the United States, it'd be nearly impossible to staff. I mean, if we all of a sudden adopted that many courses to teach at each school, where would we get the staff to do it? There aren't a whole lot of people that are breaking down doors to become teachers. It's, how do you make teachers relevant? How do you make the profession appealing? How do you take the subject matter and diversify it in a way in which any kid, regardless of their life aspirations, finds relevance in it, right? One of the things that you also said too is, and I think that this is an area that definitely needs to change, is, you were talking about physics, that you have to sit in physics class, you're not going to be a physics teacher. You have to sit in this class, and you're probably not going to pursue a career path in that particular. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not the school's responsibility to decide what you're going to do with your life. What we try to do is, by offering all these different courses and making you take these classes, we provide you with options. Okay? If all of a sudden a job opportunity comes along, right, and you really want that job opportunity, but one of the caveats to that is that one of the prerequisites to that is that you had to take physics, and we didn't make you take physics, it's now our fault you're not getting that job. We don't want to be in that situation. Life is pretty funny, because you never know. I mean, you think you have your career path set, but you never know what opportunities are going to come your way. So we try to offer a large, we cast a wide net and try to have a breadth of knowledge, so that, you get to dabble a little bit in all of the different subject areas to see, am I experienced enough in this to get this kind of job? Am I experienced enough in this to get this kind of job? Ultimately, the path you take, that's up to you. It's not up to us. And I think that that's why we try to offer so many different, that's why we require so many different classes. And, you find yourself sitting and you're like, what am I ever going to do with this? At the end of the day, you really don't know if you're going to need it or not. So that's one of the reasons why we do what we do. But then the other part that I wanted to address definitely is, one of the things that definitely does need to change about education is, we're used to going to math and learning math for that 1 hour a day in that math class, right? And then English for that 1 hour in English class, and then science and science class and everything. What we don't do is we don't engage the students with an education that demonstrates how all of these subjects work together, right? Teaching concepts in isolation is fantastic for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, right? What I would really like for school systems to do is something that's a lot more innovative, that says, hey, what are some of the issues that exist in our local or global community, right? Take global warming, for example, okay? Using all of the different subject areas, how do we tackle the problem of global warming? Because the reality is, in order to understand or in order to tackle global warming, we have to think about it from an economic point of view, because it's going to cost a lot of money. Think about it from a political point of view, right? Because if I'm the politician that's currently elected, how do I get my constituents to get on board with me and recognize that global warming is an issue? There's my ELA skills, right? And rhetoric and those types of things. Global warming, examining the problem from the point of view of a biologist, an environmentalist, a environmental chemist, all of these types, a mathematician, it takes, there's no real world problem that exists that I can go and I can say, I'm only going to use my English language arts skills to solve that problem. It doesn't happen. Unfortunately, because we teach these subjects in isolation, we've kind of tricked ourselves into believing that solutions are one-dimensional. I only need English to pass this test. Therefore, when confronted with a life problem, I only need this to overcome. No, and so I think education has to be a lot more dynamic. It needs to be something that is tangible, something that gets all the disciplines working together. And I think that if we did things like that, I think the engagement level would go through the roof. Because now all of a sudden, instead of saying, oh, when will I ever use this in math, for example, now all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I understand why I need to. Because I'm attacking real world problems and issues multiple ways from a variety of perspectives. The other thing that does too is it gets everybody working together. If I excel in math and you excel in physics and somebody else excels in language arts and everything, understanding that we need all those parts to fix that problem, it almost forces collaboration. Hey, we have to work together in order to solve this issue. This is something that none of us can do alone. And I think we've created enough problems in the world that are going to require a great deal of collaboration in order to solve. So is high school still relevant? Yeah, I think it is. It affords everybody at least a minimum level of opportunity. What I would like to see, though, is curriculum gets revamped and so that it's more dynamic. And so we have opportunities for cross-curricular education and collaboration. Absolutely, so that this half of the school is working with that half of the school. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all trying to march kids in the same direction. Why not do it together? Tackling problems and issues that are relevant and meaningful to our local community and our global community. Why not do that?